Hello, this is George Sandmann. I'm the founder and CEO of Growth Drive. And Growth Drive is a system used by business advisors to drive client profits, growth, and value. Now, we're also a community. Every week we get together to talk about all things business advisor, everything clients, cases, things we're seeing out in the world. Now, tune in here to this podcast, and you can join the conversation by scanning this QR code, passcode 867-5309. Jump into the conversation. Everyone's welcome. We're looking forward to having you. So here we go. On with the show.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Good morning.
Yeah. Picked up the wrong one. Good. Let you share, Larry, and then I'll go back.
I know you start. You talk a little bit about BF, how you doing, and then I'll.
Yeah. So Ed and I just finished reviewing a proposal. We go tomorrow with the client. This is the one we mentioned last week. We did introduced by the COI's public accountant, and let's say public accountant's not right. It's the CPA firm that's looking to do more advisory service work, right? And so Ed was all excited. He had picked up one of the projects we early on was sales compensation. We got about 6 salespeople, and it's that probably 95.5% of the workforce is working, 5%'s working, then 95's not. So he is all pumped up about doing this special project work, because we happen to be back in the industry he grew up in. So that's fun. And then with that, we're implementing a modified EOS implementation with it. So we're taking a chunk of the growth driver where it relates to the alignment issue, and we're talking about there's 5 things that you start out with the EOS focus day, and you get around to building the organizational chart. They call it accountability chart, but none. Needless to say, he's got some real significant accountability issues. So we're excited about that, and he's run rates 30 million with a really good, strong earnings in the back end of it, and got a bunch of real estate amassed for the 30 years of doing this work. So just a real enthusiast. He called me yesterday, all concerned that he's going to miss our meeting because he's got something else on top of it. Very conscientious client, which is sometimes very difficult to find.
Right?
The whole premise is when I moved away from EOS and not realigning myself to them because of the rigidity of the program, my vision was something like this, where it's a modified, taking the components of the structure that Gino's put together with the new ideas, relatively new ideas with the 3 dimensions, right? And be able to kind of like work that into one curriculum as a way to kind of, because one is the owner, he has a CFO coming in law type relationship, and they're all excited. New generation's all excited about using EOS, right? So I'm tagging that component part and then tagging the growth drive component part to work with the owner he's 60. So, maybe within the 10-year, but the combination has come together, which I've envisioned this for quite a while, that we can be able to take those 2 pieces and bring the whole organization together under EOS, and then still kind of layer on the growth drive.
Yeah, Joe, I love that, man.
Good.
EOS is as you know, and we have a bunch of reformed EOS implementers, and like you in the community. EOS is good at looking internally, right? And it has a terrific process, especially the discipline, hey, Silvana, of focusing on rocks, right? And putting all the noise over, segregating the noise to the issues chart, like we do in our workshops with the parking lot, right? We're kind of putting those other things in a parking lot. What I love about what you're doing is it sounds as though, if I have this right, you're saying, hey, well, what we know is what we know, but we don't know what we don't know. I sound like a Dr. Seuss. But we need to look at the outside world and what are best-in-class businesses doing that we might adopt as a best practice and help move the business forward. And I love that that the next generation is excited and engaged. Now, how do we say, cool, well, you don't get to set the goal, the private capital markets do. Let's look at what they are going to hope you want to do. I bloviate. I apologize. But that's cool, Joe. I'm thrilled for you.
Hello. Hi, Silvana.
Did that make sense, Joe?
Yeah. I was good.
Didn't want to misconstrue you.
I don't know if it's generational or not. I'm not sure about that.
It's just, yeah, you're right. You're right, Larry. I think the beauty about the whole traction series is this: what the heck is EOS?
Try me. You said generational. I'm curious what that means.
Well, lost my screen. I'm not sure where you guys are here. Anyways, the generational conversation is around this. He happens to have some new family members coming into business, and immediately they've heard about EOS. The owner hadn't heard about it.
The power of
Heard about it by now. I don't know, but anyways, so it's popularized with the accountability wave, right? And so if you can have that as an anchor point, and then, oh, by the way, we're going to introduce Growth Drive to you about how the business can really make money. You know, how do you cook a frog 1 degree at a time, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I like about the Gino Wickman's distributed, everything is IP is open sourced. And so, they've done a really good job of getting the message out there in the community. And I would love to see what the heck is Growth Drive version.
Well,
I know you're trying to work on something, but I think that might very well be the next book that you come out with, George.
Yeah, the next book is similar intent, right? The next book is designed to help CEOs understand why, the concepts of strategic intent and strategic capacity, and creating a business with irresistible culture and brand, right? And irresistible culture and brand. And that's something that, Gino primed the pump, and I've had this many conversations with the guy. He seems like a great guy, right? And he has certainly been very giving with the world, as I am, right? My methodology is out there. It's available. The community's free. Yeah. I'm not a me too, but we have similar philosophies. And I think it's a philosophy of his that the private equity guys didn't do EOS any favors by turning it into a franchise system. Now, history may prove true, and may prove that may make me eat my words. I may end up, who knows where this goes. However, how do we help CEOs understand these important concepts and play that out? Because the 3 dimensions of growth, how do we get them to say, I identify with this dimension, and now I get that strategic capacity is the thing. That's funny. I just published a blog article on this point, that strategic capacity is the thing, and that I have to think through my intent. I have to understand my business's ability to deliver that intent. Then here are the levers I can pull but the bottom line, these businesses do create irresistible culture, and because brand is the outward manifestation of culture, brand. And that's actually the working title of the book. So thank you, Joe. And I'm working on it, man. I'm working.
No, I think that, what we have is written towards the consultant, right? I mean, the advisor, it's an advisor level presentation.
Let's commit to this. I will write an ebook that's relatively easy to approach, that isn't going to inundate our clients, that talks about these concepts: strategic intent, strategic capacity, and importantly, why they're important and how they play out, how they play out in a real case. And when we use the Ridge Specialty Tooling case in the C3D certification course, and the class that Barry Goodman and I teach, where we walk through how the methodology and process play out for Diane, for her son, who's going to take over the reins, and for her senior leadership team, which needed some coaching up, right? And frankly, probably, some hard decisions. I'll commit to creating an ebook.
Well, then think about this from a distribution standpoint. What about white labeling that one?
Yeah. Yeah. As we do, Joe, absolutely. Because as we do, if you go into the community, you look for client facing resources and COI facing resources, of which we generate. In fact, I have to ask Catherine, which we generate basically every week now, 1 or 2 of them. This, you should be able to promote your brand, frankly, your reach and relevance on this topic to clients and prospects. 100%. I'm going to protect my IP, but that can be, but that's a footnote, right? Larry, does that all make sense?
If you,
It does. No, I'm sorry, Joe.
No, go ahead.
About the multiplication factor of that, right? And so if just one person, if you just have one channel, now you have several hundred channels to be able to get that message out there and refer everything back to the book and tie it back and then but make it easy for us to go through a 20-minute conversation and then just share it with the client saying, here's the abridged version of it. Here's the, everybody wants a Cliff Notes version, right?
Yeah, I will commit. I'll commit to getting an ebook here.
It would sounds like a nice one of these AI projects, right?
The Growth Drive GPT, I couldn't begin to count. I can tell you that there are at least 300,000 words in there, and that is only three resources. There are 20 resources in there. I'm not going to go and count. Who gives a? But that it is foundation in the Growth Drive methodology and process is robust. And it is turning out, Mike D isn't on the call this morning. I believe he's playing golf, but we had a long conversation yesterday and he wasn't trying. He called me and said, hey, I want to take the strategic planning report, which is being replaced by the level 2 report. Hold tight. They're coding it right now. That's what I'm doing on this other screen. But he wanted to turn it into a client deliverable. And it's 72 pages. And how do we start teasing out what's important? So, and here now, Mike is not a Luddite, but he is a novice to AI. Mike clearly is not a Luddite. He was the Growth Drive Member of the Year in 24. So I had him, and I was just instructing him orally, had him load that report into the GPT and then I was helping him understand what a good prompt looks like. And he started, it's pretty intuitive. Once you get one, you're like, whoa. And I'm like, hey man, why don't you ask it to add this chart, to do it as a down, to turn it into a PowerPoint presentation. He did all of that on our call. He's like, oh my God, this saves me days. Like, yes. And he was getting good results. Now, as the woman, I should get her name, 2 weeks ago yesterday said in a shareholder's presentation by OpenAI, it still hallucinates. It is not perfect. So I will admonish people to check the work. I had it yesterday. It did something. I'm like, what the? And I yelled at it. I'm like, never do that again. So you got to check the work. And, we're going to get some hallucinations, but I get very few of them. So you're right, Joe. Okay, who's had too much caffeine? I'll stop.
You have enough.
You're right, Joe.
Joe, I'm glad we're having this conversation in part because I respect what Wickman had done early on, putting 80% of everything they teach public facing.
Yeah.
You could Google it. It's on their website. It's in their book. And same with Vern Harnish with Scaling Up. They're different bodies of work, right? Completely. One's a methodology, and the other one is a set of best practices around 4 areas. But it's all there. And what I have found is that when you do that, you are giving, right? But yet you're inviting. And you're inviting the curiosity for people to say, there must be more here. How do I put this together? How do I implement it? How do I use it in my practice? And the numbers prove that out. And now that we have a CD3, that certification, there must be more. You're elevated the bar multiple levels by doing that and by putting out content. And so I respect that, and I think it works. I had an interesting call on Friday, and Silvana, you're still on mute, I think.
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay. I had an interesting call Friday.
Can you hear?
Yes. You have a nice background on your porch.
Thank you.
It's a business owner that makes an electronic data interchange software, and she plays in a pool with the big boys and girls. She's developed a company of $4 million EBITDA a year over the course of 20 years. And I actually don't even know her revenue. I just know her EBITDA. She is sharp, she is focused, and she wants to sell in the next few years. So her business attorney and I are close, and we had lunch together, the three of us. But she is so unorthodox. I got stuck on what path to take. Because when we talked about private equity, she says, I have to evaluate my company like private equity is going to buy it. So I had Eisner Amper do a deep due diligence valuation, and it's worth 60 million, but that was 4 years ago. And we lost some sales since then. So it's worth less now, maybe 50 million. So I'm like, wow, she lives in the same house she grew up in the town I grew up in. She's 2 years younger. We know some of the same people. And I think she has very little expenses and she has all this wealth. But she says, I'm stuck. So we said, okay, tell me more about your management team, your leadership team. I have none. I'm like, then how does the business work? I have each functional area where I brought in subject matter expertise from the outside world as consultants, working with my manager, and they build everything from the software to the sales to the marketing, and they don't even need to talk to each other. I'm the one who talks to everybody. I said, but private equity would look upon that as being a deficit in terms of them then running the business when you haven't created. She goes, I don't get that. I don't understand that. What do you mean? Why do I need a management team? I built this whole business without one. All right. And so we kind of got stuck in some of the logical things we think and do. And George, remember my plumbing buddy?
Yeah.
This company who
Yeah.
built a $30-something million business,
7 million. Yeah.
generating about $1.5 million EBITDA a year. He didn't even know what the word strategy was.
Yeah.
No idea. I goes, Larry, I don't know what a goal, a strategy, a tactic. I hear these words, they're meaningless to me. I built this business without all that corporate stuff you guys talk. So here's the question to the room is, how do I proceed with someone who's unconventional, but yet hungry to maximize value?
Maximize value or sell?
Well, maximize value back to where it was so she can sell. And she admits she is stuck growing it. And all the things I know, like, how does that feel? The emotion of that, none of that kind of penetrated to her to see that she has red flag to PE. Anyway, you get the picture. Go ahead.
Can I ask a question? This is this morning's blog article again. Might it be helpful to discuss it in terms of the Immortal business? And that this business needs to demonstrably, predictably create confidence. So it needs to become immortal so that it can go on to greater glory after she's gone. And it's the after she's gone. It's that when we get people to understand that what private equity is buying is not your past performance, it's the promise of future performance. And the higher their confidence, the higher the multiple, the value you can see. That is strategic capacity, right? And have you run her through a Clarity One?
I offer to do it for free because I see opportunity with her to help her in that next stage. I think someone in our book has a book titled The Next Stage.
Yeah.
Something like that, right? I forget who. So I would almost look at it from a Carl Cox lost as CEO a little bit in that sense. But what I didn't say is what you just did, George. I didn't paint it. And I offer the clarity. She might do it. I don't want any charge. I want to be able to build a relationship with her early on, just that tool. I do charge for it sometimes I don't. In this case, I wouldn't, and then have a conversation with her. The door's open. It's not like she shut it down, far from it.
How well do you know the business?
I don't, I really don't know the electronic data interchange EDI with API overlaps to integrate with ERPs. So she loves 3 letters, EDI, API, ERP.
Yeah, Silvana's like, that's my world.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? It is.
It is. Larry, by the way, I wanted to talk because I need to apologize. I need to leave early. I'm in the middle of my NLP training, which stands for Neurolingual Programming.
Yes. You told us about that. Yeah.
And Larry, one of the things that I have been drilled to for the last 3 days is develop rapport and what's conscious and unconscious tactics for developing a rapport. I feel like maybe that's the starting point. Both with your $30 million plumbing business or this lady, Ron Everett and I, we had a client. She wasn't this big in California. She was smart tech lady, platinum IBM community, business. And this lady reminds me of her a little bit because she was like the, superstar, but also the chalk point for the business. So I don't know. I just think that if it was me, I like what George said, but I think more important than that is take a step back and let's not talk about the growth. Let's talk about what her personal goals are, how she envisions the world, and maybe take her down the path of, okay, you want to sell to private equity. Okay, let's assume for a moment you succeeded in growing. Done. Now close your eyes and tell me, how do you see that happening? And how do you think, you personally, with your current knowledge, how do you think, what are the drivers that private equity would care about? And if you will know what she knows because she will paint you a picture. And after she paints the picture, you can figure out all the gaps. And I think that's probably another way for her in her own mind's eye to explain what her belief system is, how she looks at it, and how she envisions it happening. And then take back and then start pulling it apart, her vision with the reality, and then go from there. I love the clarity part. I hope she does it. But I feel like you'll need to spend a little bit more time understanding the rapport, like getting into a rapport with her where she feels comfortable with you.
We had excellent, it's a good point, Silvana. I like that. I like elements of it, and I agree. The reason I sent the clarity is, and I sent her the link and everyone told her as a follow-up here, is she loves these type of things, loves reading. It doesn't mean she does. There's an intellectual side to her, a curiosity, but not necessarily action. Interesting, because I did get into why you want to sell. You're doing great. Why do you want to, in 2 years, if you did sell, or 3 years, what are your interests? What is your goals, and how do you see your life after? And she shared she's on her second marriage, and her husband is much older. She's 62. He's in his mid-70s, and he wants to retire and travel, and health. He's not exactly the healthiest guy right now. And so her motivation is not her own leaving the company, which I think is always dangerous. It's to spend time with her husband and maybe travel a little bit in the United States, not even like world travel, just like maybe move to Phoenix area where they have friends who moved. It's simple stuff like that. And so I think a part of this is the intellectual, where growth, clarity can bring in the conversation, the Immortal company. But I think there's a little bit more about the emotional part of this. She doesn't believe in management teams. So there's a hurdle there. But I think that I want her to also see that what you just said, Silvana. I think that's very important. The emotional side, which I'm good at having those conversations. But I also want to say that I want to better understand where she's getting an assumption just because of EBITDA that her business with a multiple is worth that amount. Are they buying the software, or are they buying the company? And I want to be able, because if they're buying the company, they're really buying a deficient company the way it's structured. When they lose her, there's no way to operate the way they are.
But I'm just gonna add something to that, and I'm gonna add something to that. With technology companies, I want to build upon your last point. It's very important to figure out what the secret sauce is, if there is any. If there is secret sauce, it's much easier to sell the company. If there is no secret sauce, then the multiple will be lower and it will be very difficult to sell the company. What does that really mean? What they really mean is this. If somebody else is doing the same thing that she is doing, the only reason why somebody is going to buy her is for her sales and for her clients. However, if somebody is doing the same thing that she is doing, but she's doing it in a more innovative way that does X, Y, and Z, that gives better results, then they're buying it for that particular secret sauce in addition to the sales. So we need to figure out what that looks like.
Very good point. That is not a path I thought of, because I did not ask her in conversation. I could pull out, and I'll hand it over to you, George. I could pull out that it is the innovation in the software, and it might be the client base they're buying. They're not really buying a mature, structured company. I think it is the software, but I want to ask it specifically. And what I want to do this in a couple of months is get together for lunch with her again. I won't push to clarity right now. I want to have that secret sauce conversation and that more personal connection conversation again. I would like her to be a client, but I learned the plumbing guy won't work, by the way, never will work. He told me he cried on the phone. I have given him hours. He won't do the clarity. He has cried on the phone with me, not on the phone, on Zoom and in person, because of how his daughter, he had to fire his daughter, and it destroyed him because she was destroying the company, and how it broke their relationship apart. There was no path for me to move forward there. Okay. Anyway, this was good, Silvana. Thank you.
Guys, I'm trying hard not to interrupt, but I'm an excitable guy. So thank you for letting me let the steam out of the pot. One, Larry, you describe, and Silvana, you described the growth conversation, right? The growth conversation isn't in the software. The growth conversation is tab 5 of this book that people are loving. There you go, Joe. Tab 5, the growth conversation, right? Getting at strategic, that deep why and continue. So that's one point. Also, Silvana, I am so gratified to hear you describe several of the growth driving objectives that are in our methodology. The methodology you use, Joe uses, Larry uses, Al, Frank, Dan, all the kids on the team, because you're talking about a differentiated product. You're talking about the ability to, you're referring to the ability to sell on value, not price. You're talking about innovation, the crazy 8 of growth, right? It is the crazy 8 of dimension 2, creating predictable, sustainable growth. And those are all super accretive to value. So I'll stop there. I love what you're putting down. Thank you.
Yeah, that's
good. So
up.
Larry, I'm happy to assist for you to make sense of her business.
And even though I do have a client that is a municipal bond SaaS company who's hosting, he's a client and in my CEO peer group, and he's hosting it tomorrow, our monthly meeting. I have never talked to him about positioning for sale. It's always been about growth. So I'm comfortable there. But here, I got a little tripped up because it's a non-traditional company, and my other SaaS client is a traditional and structured company. Anyway, you get the picture. Thank you.
What do you mean by a traditional structured company?
But because a better way of saying it is conventional in structure and function, where and I asked her, can you go away on vacation for 2 weeks? That's easy because each one of them know exactly what to do. And I don't need to even check in with them. But she has the idea of bringing them together in a room called a management meeting or at least zero. Her big complaint is none of them are strategic.
Okay, Larry, let me add, I just had a client sell for $18 million business. He had the same exact thought process. He sold the business, ended up merging it with a They were basically their salesperson. People were passing each other in the hallway at their one client, one of the bigger clients' office, and the bigger client said, "How about putting those two SKUs together?" And that's what they did. And so, what they were requiring was their ability to get the work done. They had some processes they liked, but he pretty much ran the business. He had some leaders, but he didn't really consider to be leadership team. They were good doers, and it's 18 million. So who are we to judge? Who are we to judge, right? So not everything has to go in this magical box. You're trying to make the square peg round hole. Let your, predetermined, just be open-minded that there is alternatives, and maybe it's just
Right.
coaching her to figure out what she wants to do, so she's has less pain when she does sell, right? And
Right.
so what are we running to? And Savannah just described that what they're buying is not what a traditional management structure purchase. And so we got to suspend judgment and see what happens, see where it goes with it or not. I mean, that just maybe you can't do anything for her, but that the work probably is in her mind and getting her comfortable with the life after sell. I have the same situation. A younger wife who's like 65, just in the 62, really hitting all her juices. Large company, 450 employees, founder still around. The founder married this lady and who's 65 and he's 82, right? Health issues, trying to travel, all that stuff's coming into play. ESOP is a really good alternative for them, but they won't cut their overhead. They need to do the 2.5 million. That's kind of the threshold for what they want to do on the ESOP. So what is it?
I'm sorry. I wanted to say something, but I have to go. Joe, keep going. Larry, let me know. I'm starting training.
Okay, keep
I
going,
wanted
but that
to
was
give you
very
guys
helpful.
one more nugget about a real example of the secret sauce sale versus regular sale. And it was 5 times more than the initial valuation by the time we figure out, Ron Everett figure out the secret sauce. It went from 5 million to 28 million. But I've got to go. I'm so sorry. Sorry,
no,
Joe, I
that's
didn't
great.
mean
We'll
to
follow
interrupt.
up.
I just wanted to add this before I left.
Thank you. That was great.
Thanks, Silvana. Bye.
But the conversation with the founder, who's the 80 guy, and the wife, who's the 65-year-old, that really needs to come together to say, how many more, this guy's like, I don't think I got another 5 years in me, right? And he's just hanging around this Columbus while all his other people are down and living a different life. So there's a bit of a trap, right? When the age difference in that marriage, and they're trying to figure things out, and one person is just getting all sorts of excitement about the work, and the other one is really ready to move on. So that partnership, it'll be in a whatever it is in a business, there's two different, one wants to push the gas, the other one wants to slide back. And so whether it be a marriage or a business partner or whatever, but all that drama has to be dealt with, because if not, it will pop back up over and over again and never to be totally dealt with. And so is that your work? I don't know. I don't know what, if that's in your wheelhouse, but it's certainly something to refer out to help them figure that out.
Business is a family business.
Yeah.
You see that all the time, Joe. You bring up
And
an important point. We see that all the time in cases where, the spouses or partners may be running the business, or one is in the business and one isn't. And when we get them both at the table, you end up with competing visions for where their lives are going. And what did we see in a case here about a year ago? The wife wanted to turn the business into a franchise, and the husband was like, I am so done. He was out, right? He is already emotionally checked out. And it was through this growth conversation and what you're getting at, Joe. Let's say, hey, let's listen to let's get the full feel for what's going on and what the future might look like.
Yeah, this is This was great. I took away, and thanks, Joe, for that added part. I took away about three things here. One is that I often ask about what's your secret sauce, and I just lost in the conversation. I didn't ask that Friday, and I'm glad Silvana reminded me of that. I also wanted to your point, Joe, also really get into the why sell besides your husband aging out. And by the way, another factor that makes it hard to sell, and she doesn't realize, one of those key departments is run by her husband. And so and he drives operations too. So the next part is that immortality type of conversation. And the other is what you said, Joe, it's, I want to better understand her life after sale. She loves this. I don't think she really wants to sell.
Right, right. And you know what? And can there be an alternative to that? Can there be a partial, do a partial bite of the apple program? And that allows them to then come in and build that structure
Yeah.
that they need to run the organization long term. So she gets the help in the dynamics, but also gets kind of a cash out to then go and do. But don't ever underestimate the need for having an office. People think that they see their business, they see their contemporaries retiring and then just falling apart, right? They need an office to go to. And I don't care if they get there for 2 hours, whatever. It's their office. They come to, they work. They feel like they're part of the team. It's very disconnecting for a former business owner. I went through this I call it, purgatory. You're in the office maybe, but the whole, the mergers happen. So people are coming to you saying, I can't believe this happened. I don't have any control. I mean, I'd love to help you out. I'm just fighting the battle like everybody else, right? So that's like the worst scenario. Oftentimes they just lose their thrill of everything, and so they're afraid.
Many times,
Dealing
Joe.
with the fear.
Yeah, you can only play golf so much. And for those who don't play golf, who say, I always wanted to play golf, I'm going to retire and take lessons. Good luck. Yeah. But I think
Fear.
I think what you're saying, and this is important. I want to write these words down. These are not your words, but your words stimulated this. People need a sense of belonging. And George, that's your text message to me when you're on the plane about ritual, sense of belonging. We all seek, almost all, there's exceptions, but the majority of people seek a sense of belonging and need. And when we join our community here, even today, there's a sense of belonging and need. People who retire still need to substitute one sense of belonging and self-value, self-worth to another. And when they don't have that, it is effing scary for them. And that's what happened to a friend who sold steel bit business just in the last 6 months. And now his wife tells me that he's staring at the walls. He didn't have a plan after. So there's no longer a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
So that's
when I was sitting with a meeting with a client the other day, and they talked about this plant, the visit they were doing, and flying into Florida, staying at their house, and then driving 3 hours to get to wherever they're going, and they came back, and they went out to dinner that night, and they're getting ready for a flight back to Columbus, and they ran into some friends, and hey, what are you doing tomorrow? Let's just hang out. No, I gotta get back to work. And he's like, work? What are you talking about, work? I mean, this guy is, 40, 50 million plus net worth, and he's still working like a dog. And so I think partly is, can you get them with their contemporaries? Can you get the kind of like, what is their consideration of what are they missing out on by, sometimes it's, I don't want that. Right. But oftentimes if you can get them kind of understanding what it looks like, spend some time in that community, whatever that is.
right.
And really sort of try to get them to experience it firsthand, because this was just a shock to his system. He like, I got to go back to work. Why don't you stay down here and spend a couple of weeks with my good friends? And so I think this is really it's wearing on him to the point where now if he wasn't exposed to that, he would never know the different world that he's missing out on. And oftentimes these guys are just nose grinders. I mean, just battling it out, and they choose not to bring in those other distractions because they're really focused on the goal.
It's a good point, Joe.
Yeah. When we introduce them to an alternative outcome, that really starts getting their mind thinking differently. And that's our responsibility, is to
Yeah.
help them
Joe,
introduce
you're,
those
you're speaking
resources
of
to
a
say,
need for a mastermind peer group of the business owners who recently sold.
Larry, can I pounce the hell all over that, please?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
my internet connection is really unstable, so I'm sorry if you keep losing me. They're working on, they put in a new mesh network and they're fine tuning it. Anyway, what best, and let's take David Parsons, right? New to the community, rabid SEPA, rabid growth driver, and now engaged, participating in the C3D. He sold his business and did very, very well. What is the best Encore career for a successful CEO? The best Encore career is to join us, right? Share that knowledge, work on your own terms, leverage what you know, what you've done, and honestly, who you know, because they have plenty of friends, and say, hey man, I just sold my business. It was brutal, because it generally is. Here's what I wish I had known, etc. What a fabulous Encore career. And exit planning is actually helping us create crops of Encore career business advisors. They probably don't really want to be exit planners. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't know. Great if they should also, I hope they also find us. And we're working on that.
not every player is a coach, George.
I'm sorry?
Not every player, just because you played doesn't mean you're a good coach.
Yeah, but you know what, Joe? You're absolutely right. And I'm still going to ask, right? I'm still going to ask. I'm not going to say, hey, man, you're going to sit on the sidelines.
Having that experience is very connecting to the community, to the owners. And, matter of fact, there's several of the owners that were in very similar peer groups to me, and that's the kind of immediate trust factors there. That's for sure. It's just that, there's talent for development and then talent for driving, and that's not every player is.
Joe,
and that's where a process is so powerful.
I did have a question, a completely different question. XPX.
Yep.
Any experiences with that group, and what's the thoughts there?
Larry?
XPX.
It's the Exit Planning Exchange.
Yeah.
I've heard of it. I don't know.
When I was flying around and being invited to speak to the groups, not by XPX Corporate, just by people, frankly, people I was working with in the nascent community, what has evolved into Growth Drive. It was a very well organized and focused networking group, and I don't want to give it short shrift, but and it's regional and relatively limited in size, but it can be a good place to go and learn and network. I mean, think of it with color of, right? Not the same as, but with color of an EPI chapter, right? It's different than a BEI chapter. BEI chapters are designed, they're using the Noah's Ark concept. There are two wealth advisors, two, and then when that's full, they build another chapter. EPI has a more open structure. I think you have to be a SEPA. I'm not even sure. But XPX has sort of color of the EPI. And to the best of my knowledge, and let's ask ChatGPT, they don't have a methodology or process.
Well, I'm on their New Jersey site, and I believe the lawyer who had introduced me to the business owner the other day is a member of this group. That's where I heard of it from. And put the power of XPX membership to work for you and your clients. It's an exchange. There are state chapters, trusted advisors from different walks. I don't see where you have to be certified as an exit planner.
Yeah, I don't believe you do. I don't believe of a networking. I don't even know if it's structured collaboration. It's networking.
Just pause the recording for just a second here, George, because
I can. In fact, I'm going to stop the recording, and I have to scoot anyhow. So
yeah.
This episode is brought to you by the Growth Drive Summit. Our theme this year is building a profitable advisory business. Join us in Charleston, South Carolina, October 6th, 7th, and 8th. Expand your network, learn new skills, and generally have a good time. This is a top-rated event. We're looking forward to seeing you there. Thank you.